I got to see fear and learning like directly in the moment. And I will never forget this moment. And it's so connected to what you said. I was with this young person and I had to be like an extra teacher in a classroom.
Yeah.
And I was in a math classroom. And this teacher, great teacher, he was just trying something. Like, I'm not going to even put it on him, right? He just tried something, try to get some engagement up. But he gave the students a sheet of math problems. And he was like, and I'm going to call 5 of you at random to come up to the board and do the work. And so then everyone was like, oh, they got all up in arms. But I was specifically sitting next to a student who was constantly getting in trouble in certain classes. In my class, they were wonderful. They were wonderful. We had a very strong relationship, but I never really struggled with that person in this class. But when I went to this class, I saw a completely different side of this person. And the teacher put the sheet in front of them and they physically turned their body away. That was the first thing they did. And then the teacher kind of slid the paper and then they slid the paper away. Right. And then they were like, the teacher said, okay, cool. You're going to be one of the people to go up, which really just ignited in this person. Like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go up there and I'm going to have to show everyone that I don't know. Right. And what's so unfortunate about school is that school is the place where you should be okay to not know something because you are there to learn. But because of all these limiting beliefs that we have around education that students have from society, from teachers, from parents, from, peers, siblings, right? It happens. Even if you're a teacher who tries to challenge that, you're still going up against years of the beliefs around this, right? That's right. A means I'm a good person. F means I'm a bad student, right? And in reality, it's just an indicator of how engaged you are with your education. So they did everything possible to try to get kicked out. There was another person at our table because I was sat next to them. I was like, all right, I'm going to sit next to you because you're acting a little bit wild right now. I sat next to them. They were like reaching at the other person, trying to take the pen out of their hand. They were like, I'm bored, like yelling and getting really aggressive and stuff like that. And so eventually the teacher was like, I'm going to have to send you out. And I'm like, that's what they want. So I was like, let's go on a walk, right? Let's just go for a walk. And I walked with them and I talked. And eventually, because of the relationship building, right? Because we'd spent, this is our second year together at this point. I was like, what's different? What's different from when you were in my class and you answered a question and you jumped up and screamed, I know the answer versus this one. And they said, I don't want to go up there and look dumb. I don't want to look stupid in front of my classmates. And they said, I would rather get kicked out of class than to embarrass myself like that in front of everybody. And to me, immediately, I was like, well, that makes sense. That makes complete sense because you feel so vulnerable up there being asked to do something that you don't understand yet. So I was like, look, I am crap at math. Let's go sit down and try to do this together. Like, let's just go back in. Will you try it with me? Like, I don't know. We can figure it out. We can bug the other kid at the table because he knows what he's doing, right? But like, let's go in there and do it together. So we went in there and we worked on it for a while. And the teacher could tell, like, okay, I'm not going to call you up, blah, blah, blah. I'll have volunteers. I was just kidding, which is great. It's like a good little like redirect because I was like, bro, are you kidding me? And which again, we're all trying and learning. And I could see right away that he learned. And eventually I kept asking the other kid, like, hey, are we doing it right? And he's like, oh, you need to like remember this. And here's something I do that helps me with this. And so eventually he looks over and he's like, hey, that's right. And I could see in my student's face this just immediate disbelief of like, no. And he's like, yeah, that's right. Like, you did it. And so then the teacher asked who wants to go up. And me and the other student were like, yo, you should go up. You should go up and try it. And so they went up to the board and it was like pulling teeth. Like it felt like 17 spirits were dragging her back. Like I could just see like, oh, I don't want to do it. So they wrote their answer on the board and then they covered it. They covered it and they were like, all right, your turn. And I could see this pleading and I was like, you're okay. Like it's not scary. We're okay. We got this. Right. And then they moved it and it was like, you're right. And there was this huge celebration, right? Because this person overcame their fear. But then we sat down and I was like, cool, we have 6 more problems to go. right? We're in it now, but now you know that you're safe in it. And I always think about that moment, even as an educator right now, like what I was just saying is like sometimes it feels safe for us
Yeah.
to stay where we think that we can be protected. But that's when learning is about safety. And
Yeah.
for me, learning shouldn't be about feeling safe and kind of how you are. It should be about expansion
Mm.
and growth. But I think the act of learning, especially the way that we do learning in schools, asks young people to be very vulnerable
Yeah.
in ways that feel emotionally unsafe to them. And so I think hugely of this, but it's the same thing when it goes to men. It's like if you don't have safe spaces where you have men who can actually open up and normalize and say, this is how I feel. Like when I tell young people, it's okay to ask for help, I have to sometimes remind them that maybe people won't give you that help. Maybe you might get pushback on that. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that that wasn't the person.
Yeah.
Right. Because if
Yeah.
you say it's okay to be emotional and to be vulnerable, and then you send these young people out to their friends who don't know how to handle that and they get emotional in front of their friends, and their friends make fun of them for it,
Yeah.
you almost do more damage to the idea of vulnerability than like what you're trying to push off. So I don't
Mm.
know if that makes sense, but
No, it
it
does.
is like some big level connection making.
Yeah.